The parsha, of course, is Parshas Vayakhel, which is mostly a repeat of Parshas Teruma, which describes the building of the Mishkan. Parshas Teruma is where Hashem tells Moshe about building the Mishkan. And Parshas Vayakhel is Moshe Rabbeinu gathers the people and instructs them about building the Mishkan. It also incorporates part of Parshas Kisisa, or I should say repetition of Parshas Kisisa. Excuse me, because in Parshas Kisisa, Hashem tells the Jewish people that they have to keep Shabbos. And of course, the juxtaposition of Shabbos and the Mishkan is to teach you that the building of the Mishkan did not override Shabbos. And therefore, we learn from that also that the building of the Mishkan is exactly what's forbidden normally on Shabbos. And in Parshas Vayakhel, Moshe Rabbeinu passes that on to the Jews and says about keeping Shabbos in the beginning of the Parsha, and then the Mishkan. Also in Parshas Kisisa is where Hashem tells Moshe to appoint Betzalel as the head of the builders of the Mishkan, and that his supporting cast should be Ahaliav, his second in command, should be Ahaliav, who was also a master builder. And in Parshas Vayakhel is when Hashem and Moshe tells the Jewish people about these appointments. So we're going to focus on one Rashi in particular in Parshas Vayakhel. And that is on the pasuk Re'u Kara Hashem b'Shem Betzalel ben Uri ben Thur lamate Yehuda. See that Hashem has called by name Betzalel, the son of Uri, the son of Thur, to the tribe of Yehuda. Who was this Thur that the pasuk talks about?
Who?
Anybody?
Isn't he the son of either Miriam?
Exactly. That's what Rashi says. Thur, Rashi says, Benoi shel Miriam, Benoh shel Miriam haya. Thur was the son of Miriam. That's a simple enough Rashi. Doesn't seem to warrant much discussion. However, when we think about it, as the Rebbe does, and the Rebbe looked into many Rashis with great depth, Rashis that you would think have no questions on them, but that's only if you're looking at it from a surface level. When you start looking into the depth of it, you realize there's a lot of questions. So this is not the first time Thur is mentioned in the Chumash. Thur is mentioned several other times. Who knows where? Yes, Mordechai. You're muted, so I can't hear you.
The battle against Amalek.
Thank you very much. The battle against Amalek, Thur is mentioned. He is one of three people who went up the mountain with Moshe. Moshe was overlooking the battle, and his hands were lifted up in prayer to Hashem. And when his hands were heavy and he couldn't hold them up anymore, so he wasn't praying with the same intensity, the Jews would start losing the battle. So in order to keep his hands up, Moshe Rabbeinu sat down on a stone, and Aaron and Thur supported his hands so that he could continue praying and the Jewish people could continue successfully defeating Amalek. And guess what Rashi says right over there? In case you want to know who Thur was the son of Miriam. And in case you're intrigued as to know who his father was, Rashi tells you that too. His father was, who knows? This is not a test. Whether you answer right or wrong will not affect your final grade.
Kalev ben Yefuna.
Kalev ben Yefuna, thank you very much. His father was Kalev, Rashi says. Okay, but that's not the first time. All right, sorry, excuse me. That is the first time. But that's not the last time he's mentioned before this parsha. He's mentioned another 2 times. Who knows?
Betzalel as a descendant.
Oh, thank you very much. In Parshas Kisisa, when the Torah tells us that Betzalel was the son of Uri, was the son of Thur, and he was going to be chosen, and this week's Parsha is when Moshe tells the Jewish people about his appointment. But when Hashem tells Moshe that, it says Betzalel ben Uri ben Thur, Lamata Yehuda. There Rashi chooses not to tell us who Thur is. Why doesn't he tell us? Probably because by now we should know it. Because he said it already in Parshas Beshalach, as Mordechai just mentioned, as well as in Parshas Mishpatim. That's a good enough hint. Now you guys can tell me where else Thur is mentioned. In connection to what? Parshas Mishpatim.
There you go.
Well, that's where Rashi mentions him. Rashi mentions him when it says that Aaron, Vayar Aaron, Vayiven Mizbeach Lefonov. Aaron saw, and he built a Mizbeach in front of the calf. Rashi brings from the Medrash that, or maybe it's the Gemara, I think it's the Gemara, that it's to be understood as Vayiven, he understood Mizvoyach Lefonov, from the person who was slaughtered in front of him. Rashi says that Thur protested when the Jews wanted to build the golden calf, and they promptly killed him. And Aaron understood that if he would protest instead of going along with them, he too would be killed. And therefore, either in order to save his own life, or perhaps in order to save the Jews from the terrible sin of killing a Kohen who was also a prophet, which is a very terrible sin, because we see that when they killed a Kohen who was a prophet in the Beis HaMikdash, his blood was boiling for more than 100 years. Who was that?
No, it was a king.
No, it wasn't a king.
Oh,
A king couldn't be a Kohen. Not if you were the king from the family of David. This is no simple question I'm asking, but if you know the answer, if you listen to the Chazar Sashatz on Yom Kippur, you'll know the answer. Or maybe it's Tisha B'Av. I could be being confused. I think it's Tisha B'Av. No, it's in the Kinnis of Tisha B'Av, not Chazar Sashatz of Yom Kippur, sorry. The Kinnis of Tisha B'Av. None other than Zechariah. Zechariah was the Kohen. Im Yeharig b'Migdash Hashem Kohen v'Navi. He was killed, stoned to death, because he was telling the people off about serving idols. And he was the son of Yehoyada the Kohen Gadol. And his blood was boiling for more than 100 years. When Nebuchadnezzar came, when Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar's general came, and he saw his blood boiling, he asked, "What's this?" The people said, "It's just some leftover blood from the sacrifices." And the blood did not resemble the blood of any animal, so he said, "It's not true, tell me the truth." And they had to tell him that it was the blood of the slain prophet and Kohen, who they had killed in the Beis HaMikdash over 100 years earlier, and it was still boiling, meaning to say he was still upset, or Hashem was still upset about his murder. And Nebuzaradan proceeded to kill thousands of Jewish people to atone for that sin. Sages, women, children, until he said to Hashem, listen, do you want me to wipe out all of your people for this? And that's when the blood stopped. So some say that's why Aaron did not allow himself to be killed, and instead he went along with building the Egel because he didn't want the Jews to sin. He was a Kohen, he was a Navi, he was near there was no Mishkan yet, but he was near the Mizbeach to Hashem, so it's a similar setup. That if they would kill in the holy place a Kohen and a Navi, they wouldn't be forgiven. So therefore he took it upon himself to build the Egel rather than have them commit that sin. So yeah, Rashi mentions Thur there. Rashi says that Thur was killed. That's in Kisisa. What about in Mishpatim? Okay, at the end of Parshas Mishpatim is when Moshe goes up the mountain. And he tells the people before he goes up, I'm going for a few days, 40 days and 40 nights. If you have any issues, v'hinei Aaron v'chur imachem, mi bal dvar migash aleihem. I'm leaving you with Aaron and Thur. If there's anybody who has any questions, bring them to Aaron and Thur. He was his stand-in leader with the lack of Moshe, and that's why Rashi says, or the Gemara says, that they killed Thur, because Thur is not mentioned again. He was so prominent. He was Moshe's right-hand man when he fought Amalek. He was Moshe's stand-in when he went up the mountain, and then he disappears from the story. And therefore, based on that, perhaps the Gemara says that he was killed, and that's why Aaron went ahead and built the golden calf. And on that pasuk, Rashi also says that Thur was the son of Miriam, and that Kalev was Miriam's husband. So same idea, that Kalev was the father. So we already know from two sources that Thur was the son of Miriam, which is why when Hashem tells Moshe to appoint Betzalel, in Parshas Kisisa, Rashi does not say anything on the word Thur, because we know it and we're expected to remember things, especially within the same Chumash, just a few parshias away. And here we are, and one parsha later, Rashi finds it necessary to remind us who Thur was. And why does he have to remind us anyway? Why is it even important who Thur was? Okay, his mother was Thur. So what? I mean, his father was Kalev. Rashi doesn't say that. Why not? Okay, so some want to suggest that Rashi's trying to answer a question. And the question is, why does the pasuk say Betzalel ben Uri ben Thur? It's unusual to go back 3 generations. It's very common in the pasuk to tell us the parent of somebody. Very common.
It's also not accurate.
What do you mean it's not accurate?
It's not. It skips a few generations with the list. I believe so. That the list of his, I don't remember. It was getting to Thur was 5 generations, not just 3.
No.
No. Okay, I could be completely wrong. I'm mixing up.
No, you're talking about Ish Yehudi Haya B'Shushan Abir Shmo Mordechai Ben Yoyer.
Ben Yoyer Ben Kish. Okay,
Kish.
Thank you.
To get back to Kish, you have to go back a few hundred years.
All right.
Because Kish was the father or grandfather of Shaul, and that was many, many generations before Mordechai. So there you have to say that the pasuk condenses it. But in the case of...
I'm still in Kodesh Adar, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. In the case of Betzalel, on the contrary, The very fact that you have to squeeze so many generations into 40 years is a big chiddush, my friends, because Kalev, when he was sent as a spy, was 40. He was only 40. That's a clear pasuk in not in Chumash, in Yehoshua. When Kalev talks about conquering Hebron, he mentions that he's 80 now, and that he was 40 at the time when he was a spy. So that means he was 40 at this time. This is just 1 year before they sent the spies. So he was basically 40. Yet he had a great-grandson at the age of 40. Try to figure that one out. So we're not going to add any more generations to that. Anyway, the point is that they explain that the reason that Rashi tells you that Thur was the son of Miriam is to explain why does the pasuk tell us Betzalel's grandfather. Now, in the case of Mordechai, we just mentioned, he is given Yichus back to Kish, the father or grandfather of Shaul, which is also a question. But they say that the whole thing of the story of Mordechai and Esther had to do with Shaul, because Shaul left over Agag, the king of the Amalekites, and allowed the Amalekite nation to reemerge. And Mordechai and Esther's fight against Amalek was kind of a tikkun and a fixing for his sin. So we can understand why Kish's name is mentioned. But normally we don't go back 3 generations. We just go back 1 generation, because that is like a last name. Nowadays we have last names. They didn't have last names in those days. So you gave the father's name to identify who you were talking about. That was standard practice. Here, the pasuk goes back an extra generation. So Rashi is bothered by that. Why does the pasuk go back an extra generation? And he's telling you that Thur is mentioned in order to give great yichus to Betzalel. You should know how great he was, that he was the great-grandson of Moshe Rabbeinu's sister. So he was Moshe Rabbeinu's great-great-nephew. That's a very important thing. And that's why the pasuk says it, and that's why Rashi says it. The problem with that is, my friends, that's a fine explanation that should have been given in Parshas Kisisa, when he's mentioned for the first time in connection to the Mishkan. He's already mentioned there as the son of Thur. And the same question applies there, and the same answer can be given. So why doesn't Rashi give that answer there? But he doesn't. He doesn't ask the question. Obviously there, he's not bothered by it, apparently because, okay, sometimes it gives a grandfather's name, big deal. Yet here, he has to explain. Another question is, even if you say that the reason he gives the grandfather's name is to give great yichus to Betzalel, why does Rashi have to say that Thur was the son of Miriam? Why can't he be the yichus? He's the yichus. Why does the yichus have to be from his mother? Thur was a very important person in his own right. He was one of 2 people chosen to go up the mountain and support Moshe when he was davening. He was one of 2 people that Moshe chose to adjudicate any disputes that might happen while he was on the mountain. So he was like the cream of the crop in terms of Klal Yisrael. That's not because his mother was Miriam. That's not a reason to be chosen. Esau's mother was Rivka. He wouldn't have been chosen for this job, right? You have to earn it. So obviously he earned the position to be able to be the second to Moshe on those occasions. So why can't you say that the pasuk is giving Betzalel's yichus because of Thur himself? Why does Rashi have to jump and say, oh, Thur was the son of Miriam, as if that explains why Thur is mentioned, when he could have been mentioned for his own merit? Okay, my friends, in order to answer this question, we have to go on to the next Rashi. The next Rashi, even though you don't have it in front of you, is on the pasuk a few psukim later. Ulahoyres nasan b'Levi, huva ahaliyav ben achisamach lamati don. And to give directions, he gave in his heart, meaning to
What
say Hashem.
chapter?
This is chapter 35, verse 34. I can put a link to it in the Zoom chat for those of you that are so inclined. Forgive me for not having made the handout, but I just arrived yesterday and I've been busy with stuff. So there you have the link. So the pasuk says, to give directions, he and Ahali of the son of Achisamach of the tribe of Dan. Rashi says, Mishevet Dan, min ha-Yerudin shebeshvatim, mibnei hashvachos, from the tribe of Dan, from the lowest of the shvatim, from the descendants of the midwives, right? Yaakov, not midwives, excuse me, of the maidservants. This is Bilhah and Zilpah, who were the mothers of Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. In this case, Dan. V'shvo hamakam leBetzalel amlechas hamishkan. The pasuk made him equal to Betzalel in terms of building the Mishkan. V'hu migdoile hashvatim, even though Betzalel was from the greatest of the tribes. L'kayim hashanemar v'leinika shua lifnei Dan, to fulfill that which the pasuk says, that a important person should not be given more recognition than an impoverished person. Obviously, in this case, it's not about wealth, actual wealth, because we don't know Betzalel and Ahaliah's personal wealth. It's about their spiritual background. We're not going to give more recognition to a person with greater background. They are considered equal. So that's the Rashi. And this can be understood. These two Rashis, which one is coming after the other, even though they're a few verses away, this can be understood as follows. Rashi is contrasting the family of Betzalel with the family of Ahaliav. The family of Betzalel was not just from the tribe of Yehuda, but on the mother's side, they were from the family of Moshe Rabbeinu. So they were like tip-top cream of the crop. Yet, contrast that with Ahaliav, who was his second in command, who was from the tribe of Dan, and Dan on his mother's side, on his father's side, it was the same as everybody else, came from Yaakov, but on his mother's side came from the Shvachos, from the maidservants. So if you want to compare apples to apples, you say, wow, he came on his mother's side from Moshe Rabbeinu's family. He came on his mother's side from a maidservant. Yet Hashem put them together to work together and almost makes them equal. So that's why Rashi says Benosha Miriam, the son of Miriam, and that's why it's not sufficient to say that Thur is mentioned because of his own qualities, because the whole point is we're trying to contrast Ahaliav from the tribe of Dan with Betzalel from the tribe of Yehuda, and we want to contrast the mother's side, in addition to the fact that obviously Yehuda's tribe is more important than Dan's because of the fathers. Yehuda was like the leader of the Shvatim and Dan was not. But we also want to contrast in terms of the mother's side and say that on the mother's side, Betzalel came from this unique family and Dan came from a kind of a second-class family, yet Hashem considered them equal. Okay, seems like a nice answer. But if that would be it, then I wouldn't have what to say for another 24 minutes. And that would be the end of the class.
Hi.
Hi.
When you said lesser class family, I heard there were etliche medrashim that you had Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah were all daughters of Lavan.
Exactly. But Bilhah and Zilpah were Lavan's daughter from a shivcha. He consorted with his maid,
yeah,
which is not necessarily forbidden for a Gentile. And he had daughters with his maid who were his maids.
right.
Halachically, if a person has relations with a slave woman, those babies are slaves, even if they are your children. They are
Yes.
still your slaves. So they had the same gene pool, yes.
There's a
but
lot
they were
of
still a
background
lower
noise.
status.
Rabbi, there's a lot of background noise.
Gene pool notwithstanding, I'm muting you, Isaac. Feel free to unmute yourself.
I'm off. I'm mute.
Okay. So
What the question I have is why go to Eov to come up with this statement as opposed to use the fact that the statement about the Mahatzita Shekel, that the poor and the rich must give the same amount.
this is a good question. The Rebbe addresses that one as well. Not only why do we have to go to that, but also why does Hashem have to teach that lesson again when he already taught it? So I just want to repeat Ezra's question. Ezra is asking, why does Rashi bring the verse, "V'lo nikar shua lefnei dal," that's a pasuk in Eov, when we see already in the Machatzit Shekel ha'ashir lo yarbeh v'adal lo yamit, that the rich do not give more and the poor do not give less. Everybody had to give a half shekel, so everybody was equal in that respect. So that's a question, but the Rebbe asks further, not just why Rashi doesn't say that pasuk, but more so, why does Hashem have to teach that lesson if we already learned it from the half shekel? Here it's like it's a lesson being taught, but we already learned that lesson. So why is it being taught again? But before, I want to ask a question on the answer, because the answer that we gave does not answer the question, my friends, because we already said in Pashas Kisisa, when Hashem tells Moshe to choose Betzalel, the son of Uri, the son of Thur, Rashi doesn't say that Thur was the son of Miriam. And the pasuk also there says that Aholiab is going to be his second in command. So why doesn't Rashi say these same comments, A, that Thur was the son of Miriam, and B, that putting them together teaches us that Hashem does not give greater recognition to the rich than the poor, and so on and so forth? That same discussion could have been found in last week's parsha. Why delay it until now? Also, another question on the text of the Rashi that we just said. The text of the Rashi is a little bit unusual. Let's examine the words of Rashi. Again, Mishevet Dan min Yurdin Shebeshvatim. Aholiab was from the tribe of Dan, from the lesser of the Shvatim. B'nei Shvachas, from the descendants of the maidservants. Ve'shvo ha'makom leBetzalel lechsa Mishkan. Hashem made him the same as Betzalel for building the Mishkan. Who Migdal HaShvatim, even though Betzalel was from the greatest Shvatim. Listen carefully to these words. Lekayim mashanemer, to fulfill that which is said, v'lo nikar shua lefnei dal, that the noble should not be recognized before the poor. What does Rashi mean when he says lekayim, to fulfill? What does that mean, to fulfill? It should be because of. like it's written. What does it mean, l'kayim, to establish? Does a pasuk need to be established? Do we have to? I mean, that's what the pasuk says. That's the way it is. Hashem doesn't give greater honor to the rich over the poor. Fine. What does it mean, l'kayim, to establish the pasuk, to fulfill it, to make it be? What does that mean? Okay, my friends. So the key to understanding this is brought in a sefer called the Levush. Who has heard of the Levush?
You'll have to come over here.
Sorry?
Rebbe, I'm sorry. No, I was talking to my wife, but I just wanted to ask a question also.
Yes.
I don't want to deviate from this, but it seems like the yichus that was also challenged with Moshe Rabbeinu with regards to Korah. The Levite that rebelled against Moshe Rabbeinu, and his descendants, Aaron and his descendants. So I thought maybe there might be some. I don't know if the expression is juxtaposition to this thing, because it seems that there was also this challenge that took place before, with regards to Moshe and Aharon, that Korah challenged them, and I think he was put to death as a result of that. This was, I'm trying to remember where I read this, but his Korah and his followers are swallowed by the earth as a result of this, but they challenge, I mean, I don't know if that has any impact on this, but it seems to me that there's something related to this,
I mean, they did have some complaints that related to Yichus, because they said that Elitzaphan ben Uziel, who was their younger cousin or the son of a younger brother, should not have been chosen as the head of the tribe, because they came from the second brother. So there was some element of that, but I don't know if that was their main complaint. They had other issues. I don't know if that was their main complaint. Not sure. Okay, so here's what the Levush says. The Levush is Reb Mordechai Yafi, who wrote a book called, or many books, and they were all called Levush. In the pasuk on Mordechai, in the Megillah, we read, "Mordechai yatzam lefnei hamelech b'levush malchus, tcheles v'chur, hateres zahav, sachrich butz v'argamon." And that describes the clothing of Mordechai. The books of Levush are named after that pasuk. One is called Levush Malchus, and one is called Tcheles, one is called Chur, and so on and so forth. And they say that he used to be a businessman, and he was once confronted by a noblewoman who kind of insisted that he sin with her, and he managed to escape through the sewer, and his clothing got completely soiled, and he decided that he was retiring from business and was going back into full-time Torah study, and his books are named after garments to recall that event, which propelled him towards that change. But anyway, Levush has a commentary on Rashi called Levush HaOira, and in that commentary, Rashi he points out a significant difference between the pasuk here, the way it describes Ahaliyav, and the pasuk in Parshas Kisisa, the way it describes Ahaliyav. In the pasuk that I posted, it says, "Ulohiris nasan belibai hu v'Ahaliyav," that he gave him to teach together with Ahaliyav, meaning to say that Ahaliyav was kind of equal to him. However, in Parshas Kisisa, when it describes Ahaliyav, first it says all of the wisdom that Bezalel had, and then it said V'itoi Ahaliyav, together with him was Ahaliyav. So he's not exactly given the same level as Ahaliyav. I'm going to send you the link to that pasuk. It's chapter 31, verse 6. There you have it. So I'm going to read it. V'ani hina nasati ito, I've given with him as Ahaliah ben Achisamach lamate Dan. Ahaliah, the son of Achisamach, to the tribe of Dan. So Rashi is bothered by the difference in wording between the two. In Parshas Kisisa, it says that Ahaliah will be with Betzalel. With means he's with him. He's not on the same level, but he's with him. In this Rashi, in this pasuk, it says hu v'Ahaliah, him and Ahaliah, putting them almost on the same level. And here's the key to the understanding. Previously, it says Thur, Betzalel ben Uri ben Thur. Rashi doesn't say who Thur was. Whatever. He was whoever he was. Maybe we know who he was from the past, and that's fine. Figure it out. Here, Rashi says that he was the son of Miriam, and he goes from that Rashi straight into the next Rashi, even though the next Rashi is on the pasuk a few verses later. They can be read as one long Rashi. The Rebbe's library includes many manuscripts of Rashi. And the Rebbe many times quotes those manuscripts in his explanations on Rashi. In the manuscript of Rashi, it is missing the vav of the Ahaliah. Looking back at the link that I sent you, the first link, the Rashi says V'Ahaliah and Ahaliah, which is the quote from the verse. So that's what would make sense. But in the manuscript that Rashi wrote with his own hands, there is no vav. Obviously, the printer took the liberty to add the vav, because after all, the pasuk says vav. So probably when Rashi was writing his commentary, he didn't look at the exact verse, and he skipped the vav, but of course it belongs there, so they put it back in. Well, guess what? Maybe the printer got it wrong. Maybe Rashi left out the vav on purpose, because maybe this Rashi is not explaining the pasuk, the Ahaliah. Maybe this Rashi is a continuation of the previous Rashi, and Ahaliah is not a quote from the pasuk. Rather, it's continuing to explain why Thur was mentioned, to contrast Betzalel with Ahaliah. And here's how the two Rashis should go. Thur benasha Miriam haya. Thur was the son of Miriam. Ahaliah, without a break, not a new Rashi, the same Rashi, Ahaliah, on the other hand, Ahaliah was Mishevet Dan, from the tribe of Dan, from the lowest of the Shvatim. And again, this is to fulfill what the pasuk says, that Hashem does not give more recognition to the noble than the impoverished. So Rashi is explaining why here trying to figure something out. Give me a second. I don't understand it, but hopefully as I explain it to you, I will start to understand it. So Rashi is explaining that here the pasuk, by saying itoi, with him, instead of saying itoi, with him, it says hu v'Ahaliah, him and Ahaliah, as if they're the same level. The purpose of that is to show you that Hashem puts them on the same pedestal. Betzalel and Ahaliah are on the same pedestal. And that's why here it's important to say the son of Miriam, like we said before, because Ahaliah's mother's side is from the maidservants, his mother's side is from Moshe Rabbeinu's family, yet Hashem places them on the same pedestal. In Parshas Kisisa, when Ahaliah is mentioned, because he's mentioned a secondary way, it doesn't show you that same idea that they're considered on the same pedestal. So therefore, we don't have to say that Thur is the son of Miriam, because so what? Big deal. And that's not, we're not emphasizing that they're the same there. We don't see that they're the same. We see that Bezalel had a supporting role. Sorry, that Ahaliah had a supporting role. Here, where they're put up on the same pedestal, Rashi wants to contrast them and say not only was Bezalel greater on the father's side, he was also greater on the mother's side, yet they are still put up on the same pedestal. Okay, that is all fine and good, but it still doesn't answer the question on the pasuk itself. Why did Hashem wait to teach this lesson to this parsha? Why, when Hashem told it to Moshe, did he say Itoi, with him? Yet when Moshe told it to the Jewish people, he said who, him, and him, putting them together. If Hashem said it one way, why did Moshe take it upon himself to say it another way? Now, of course, does Moshe have to use the same exact words as Hashem? No, I don't think so. Moshe has to say it over to the Jewish people in the way they will understand it. But here, it's not just a difference in wording, it's a different concept. Why is Moshe taking on himself to bring in a new concept, a new lesson, which Hashem didn't give apparently when he told it to Moshe? Okay, so in order to understand this, we have to go back to the half shekel. Ezra mentioned that when it comes to the half shekel, ha'osher lo yarbe v'hadal lo yamid. The rich did not give more, the poor did not give less. So it was a great equalizer. Nobody could feel greater than anybody else. Everybody had an equal portion in the half shekel. What did the half shekel buy? What did they buy with the half shekels? You're muted, Isaac. You're muted. You're still muted.
No, I know.
Go
I'm
ahead.
waiting for Ezra to come up with something while I'm
New
fumbling with the controls.
half shekel, new
Stuff.
Which stuff?
Hashem stuff.
Ah, come on, you can do better.
Okay, no, they bought the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash
Okay.
and the carbon tumid every day.
Korban Tamid, thank you very much. Korban Tamid. That was on an annual basis. What about the original half shekel, which they took an extra half shekel for that year, more so than other years, in order to atone for the Cheta Egel? What do they do with that?
Mishkan.
What part of the Mishkan? What part of the Mishkan?
I'm thinking. I would think the menorah probably.
No. Menorah's gold. This is silver.
Oh,
Dr. J, yes.
the whatchamacallit,
Dr.
the
J's
bottom. The post in which the beams went.
Oh, thank you very much. The sockets. Dr.
Sockets.
J's friend, I see, had an answer. What's your name? Paul? Okay, I can't hear you, but anyway,
Yeah.
the
Am
sockets.
I unmuted
Yeah,
now?
you are.
Am
Yes.
I unmuted?
Now I hear you. Yes. Okay.
I'm Andrea Liebman.
Oh,
and
you're Dr. J's wife. Okay, I couldn't tell. It's hard to see the whole you because it's a slice of the screen. Yes.
Well,
Go ahead.
someday. I knew the answers, but I couldn't, I hadn't figured out how to unmute fast
Oh,
enough.
okay. Okay, very good. Thank you. Good to have you at the class. Usually your camera's not on. Maybe you're there other weeks, but I didn't see.
Yeah, well, right now we'll be on
Okay,
always
very
on.
good.
here, but
We
Right
don't
now-
always do the camera.
we
Okay.
don't always do the camera, but now we will.
Okay, very good. Okay, so every other part of the Mishkan, besides the sockets, was donated according to a person's wealth. Some people gave more and some people gave less. The rich gave more, obviously, and the poor gave less. For example, the Nesiim, the heads of the people, gave the stones, the most expensive part, the precious stones for the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, and so on and so forth. So here is where you might have, the Jewish people might have a chalishus hadas. They might feel bad. They might look at this Mishkan and feel like we're not really on equal footing. Okay, we have equal portions in the foundation of the Mishkan.
I skipped a page by mistake.
God.
I skipped a page by mistake.
I'm running out of battery. I have to get my plug. Just give me 1 minute. Sorry. Funny, because on the plane yesterday, my computer worked without battery for like 3 hours, but I guess the Zoom call takes up more battery life. Anyway, the point is that the Jewish people might have a chalishus hadas. They might feel bad. Those that could not participate in a grand way, they might walk into the Mishkan and look at all the gold and look at all the grandeur and feel like we're not the same as everybody else here. Yeah, on the sockets we are, but all these beautiful utensils and tapestries and gold and silver, it's not ours. It's like you walk into a shul sometimes, and every corner has a dedication, and every stone has a dedication, every entranceway, every mezuzah, and like sometimes a person who doesn't have the means feels like this whole shul, it belongs to somebody else. Like, what am I doing here? So Hashem wanted to show, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to show to the Jewish people, no, as long as you do your part, whatever you can do, that's what Hashem wants you to do. If you're rich or you're poor, you give the most you can give, and for Hashem, that's the same. As long as you use your qualities in the way that you can, that's the same in the eyes of Hashem. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu already knew that. He didn't have to be taught that. Hashem didn't have to tell him that, because that's obvious to Moshe Rabbeinu. But the Jewish people who were being told about the Mishkan, they perhaps didn't realize it. So when Moshe gave them over this message about Betzal and Ahaliav being chosen, Moshe Rabbeinu put in that they're the same, lekayim, to establish the idea that the rich and the poor are the same. Meaning to say, of course, it's a true idea in heaven, but can you bring it into the earth? Can you make the people realize it? In order to make the people realize it, he showed them, look at the family of Betzalel, look at the family of Ahaliav. Hashem is putting them together because Ahaliav is doing the best he can, regardless of what his capabilities are. He's doing the best that he can. And of course, he was a great artisan. And therefore, he is the same. He's doing his part. He's the same. Yehuda comes from, Betzal comes from Yehuda, comes from Miriam. That's fine. That's great. But they're both doing what they are able to do. And in that sense, they are equal. And therefore, the same is true about the rich and the poor. Each person contributes what they can. And in Hashem's eyes, that's equal. And this also relates, by the way, to Torah and mitzvahs. We have some aspects of serving Hashem in which we're all the same. Everybody has to keep the same Shulchan Aruch. Everybody has to do the same mitzvahs. Nobody can say, well, I'm not a rabbi. I don't have to do that. I'm not learned. I don't have to do that. No, it's equal for everybody. But then again, a person who's more learned will be able to perhaps have greater kavanah when they daven. They can perhaps learn to a greater depth. And a person might feel like, they have so much more of the Torah than I have, and I'm so small compared to them. And that's why it's important to learn this lesson, not just in terms of the physical Mishkan, but also in terms of our Mishkan that we're building, in terms of serving Hashem, that every person within their capabilities that serves Hashem to the best of their ability, Hashem says, you have done what you can do. You are as precious in my eyes as the great Torah scholar, the Moshe Rabbeinu of the generation, who's doing the best he can do. Because that's all Hashem asks from us, is to do the best that we can do. Yes, David, you had a question.
Yeah, two things. Number one, I was going to tell you what Susan said, and then I have
see
a
it.
comment. You saw
I
what she
see
said?
it. By
Okay.
calling attention that the rich and the poor are the same means that the rich and the poor are not the same. No, that's not correct. The rich and the poor are not the same in people's eyes. And we're trying to explain to them that even though you think that way, you shouldn't think that way. By ignoring the fact that they think that way and pretending they don't, you're not going to fix the problem. We have to address the problem and try to correct it.
Rabbi,
Yes.
can I just mention, I've heard that the Mashiach will be very rich and also have a lot of chokhmah and a lot of learning. But again, it stresses very rich. This is what I'm rather curious about. Is that then you cannot really make this distinction between rich and poor if that is the basis on which the Mashiach is going to be rich. I mean, it's somebody who's got a lot of money.
I don't remember coming across that Mashiach is going to be rich. On the contrary,
Yeah, I did. I heard it in a class on the beach.
There you go.
There's a
rabbi,
pasuk.
a very big rabbi.
There's a pasuk. There's a verse in the Torah that describes Mashiach as an oni v'roichav ala chamor, as a poor man riding on a donkey. So I'm happy to hear your source, but I need to see it, because without that source, I have a verse that says he's a poor man riding on a donkey. So you have your homework cut out for you. Next class will be on Wednesday. Mitzvah Hashem, you have 6 days. So Moshe, if you can let me know, I'm happy to learn.
I could tell you the source
Yeah.
right now. I could tell you the source.
No. We're out of time. Next week.
Isaac has to go. He wants to hear the source with all the details. So we'll
I
wait for
want
next
right.
week.
With a handout before class.
Mitzvah Hashem, b'li neder, but I'll do my best.
Not you, Rebbe. Him.
Oh no, that's not part of his homework. I'm not giving that homework. Yes,
Rabbi,
David.
Thank you, Rabbi.
So
It's
when I was
good.
in yeshiva, my mashpia, Rabbi Shalom Ber Veshetsky, he said that it says that a person is obligated to ask, when will I be able to be like Avram Avinu, like the
Yes.
Avos?
Yes.
So he says, how can we be like Avram Avinu? How can we be like Abraham and Isaac and Jacob?
Yes.
Then the answer is that the same way they did their maximum to be there, that they utilized their capabilities to the maximum, so are we able to do that to ourselves.
I hear it. Excellent. Yasher koach. Have a good Shabbos, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Rabbi.
you, Rabbi.
Be well.
Thank you.
Relative.